I used to love this game. I still do. What's wrong with me? All you have to do is stream and make videos. Come on, it's the easiest job you can imagine. Literally the dream job. Get back to work. The game's community is still huge. It's a cult classic. Everyone knows it. Most of the people who watch your videos don't even play the game anymore, and they still love it. Is it that hard to play a beautiful game? At least, that's how this video was supposed to start. And then, something happened. This video was supposed to release on June 28th, 2024. I had the whole thing figured out, because I'll cut to the chase and be real with y'all, I am very, very heavily burnt out of TF2 right about now, and I know I'm not alone. If you'll pardon me going white man video essay on you for the next, however long this turns out to be, this video was, and still is, going to be talking about the fact that I'm still feeling pessimistic about this game's future, and I'm not alone in that. Then, the day before the video was set to release, I am convinced somewhere out there a monkey's paw curled, and Valve woke up. After 7 years of stagnation, the janitor and the potted plant finally convinced a Valve employee to work on the game. And by all appearances, for now, the bots are gone. There's been rumors of a few sightings here or there, but the significant majority of the bots, bot hosters, and even manual cheaters got sniped with various levels of bans overnight. And that, quite understandably, threw a wrench in my video plans, so I put it on the back burner, sat back, and I've spent the last week watching the aftermath. I'm not gonna lie, I am genuinely surprised that Valve did what they did. But you wanna know the saddest part of this whole ordeal? The game may have survived and the community may have survived, but for myself and for quite a few others, I hate to break it to you, but it's too late. It's been 7 years since Valve's last notable activity, and even if casual's playable again, 7 years is a long time to hold back heartbreak. A couple weeks back, I hopped on TF2 for a little over an hour. Me and my buddy Mac Bastard played casual and just went through lobby after lobby. The background footage for this video is a recording of that session, so you can see what we went through yourself as you listen. We saw a few slurs get thrown around, some rude behavior, some charming interactions, some amusing failed Ubers, you know, TF2 stuff, the usual. The heartbreaking part of what otherwise would have been a delightfully normal night on Payload Phoenix was the fact that in just under an hour and a half of playtime, where we requeued every time we found a bot lobby, was that only at the very end, after roughly 15 matches, did I finally get a good match of PL Snowy Coast, where no bots showed up. And the only reason that happened was because no players showed up and we had a nice time basically running competitive sixes and casual. At the end of our time playing, Mac uninstalled the game, stating, quote, "I won't be back until Valve does something." I couldn't say I blamed him. Fast forward to now, and I asked him if what Valve did was enough. His response? Sure, the bots being gone is nice, but that just scratches the surface of the game's overall stagnation, and it's hard to be hopeful that anything will actually change. Even now, I can't say I blame him. TF2 is a masterpiece of a game, and by no means can it be just dismissed by saying, dead game lol, as I so often like joking about. It has an active competitive scene, it's a cult classic. Casual's still fairly active. There's literally thousands of community servers with every imaginable custom game mode under the sun. So why am I so tired of playing it? And why am I not alone in that sentiment? I have just under 6,000 hours in the game. It's an odd number, I know, but there's folks out there whose hours range in the 5 digits. It's true of most of my friends that their most played game on Steam is TF2, and no matter what they think of it now, their allegiance to the game for its history with them is unwavering. The community around this game is huge as well, easily numbering in the hundreds of thousands of people who still pay attention to it in some loose way or another. And the impact it's had on gaming culture has reached millions over the years. It's crazy how much people love this game. And there's so much to love about it. The gameplay is smooth, there's a wide variety of game modes, complete fashion customizability built over a decade and a half of cosmetic updates, refined and balanced playstyles from 9 different classes, an active community, a strong player count, an incredible number of highly customized community servers running a mountain of community workshop created content, near on infinite stories to tell just from player-to-player interactions alone, and so much more. TF2 is a masterpiece, and if you look at my channel's videos, it doesn't take a genius to see that this one game has got me where I am today, in more ways than you could possibly know. And yet... Let's get the obvious complaint out in the open first, even if it has finally been addressed. 2 years ago, the TF2 community banded together for the hashtag #SaveTF2 movement. It had been over half a decade since the last major TF2 update. The Jungle Inferno update had dropped. Around the same time, cheater bots started overtaking cheating players in terms of the overall number of cheaters present in casual mode. Back in the day, I remember fairly frequently seeing Australian-wielding, unusual-wearing cheater squads rolling 2-fort servers for no other reason other than they could. It was a rare occurrence, but it was almost a novelty when it did happen. Lately, well, you don't need me to remind you. Bots everywhere. Literally every server. Granted, you could still find real games where the majority of players were humans, and they'd kick the bots as best they could, but they're rarer than not. TF2 is a great game, and its community can and has endured a lot. I participated in the Save TF2 movement, and like a lot of other folks, I got my hopes up. As you can probably guess, this bit of history lesson brings us to the single most devastating, heartbreaking piece of community literature I have to show for my time writing this script. The TF2 Twitter account's tweet. Quote, "TF2 community, we hear you. We love this game, and know you do too. We see how large this issue has become, and are working to improve things." That's it. 3 sentences, 2 lines. And then 2 years passed. 2 entire years. I know in TF2 terms that might not seem like a lot, but get this through your head that children were born and learned to walk in the time between Save TF2 and now. TF2 YouTuber Zesty Jesus uploaded a video about a month ago now that went in depth on TF2's active player count and found verifiable evidence that roughly 70% of the players in TF2 at any given point in time were bots, most of whom were simply there to farm item drops. So even the strongest claims of community longevity were often seen as lies. In a desperate attempt to win Valve's ear, a month or so back, a big bunch of the community got together to start the Fix TF2 movement, which had one simple goal: make casual playable again. Amidst claims of bot hosters doxing community creators and spreading criminal content through their network, Valve said nothing. No response. Moreover, there was also evidence that it was a top-down official policy to not question the problem. So that's pretty much that. The conclusion most folks came to quote a meme song that someone else made recently, "Our own developers don't want us to play. Welcome to Team Fortress for content." And then June 27th struck, a day that shall live in infamy. Ban Day. With no warning, no communication, no announcement, and no fanfare, Valve systematically struck a wide variety of critical joints throughout TF2. First and foremost, it appears VAC, or Valve Anti-Cheat, has been notably updated. Counter-Strike 2 received a major anti-cheat update a while back, and rumors have been circulating that various levels of the same style of anti-cheat were used to patch up TF2 systems. Whatever the truth of the matter, for the time being, casual is almost entirely bot-free. Aside from banning the big cheater botnets, there have also been reports of other actions. LMAO Box cheater client developers supposedly got a series of bans on their various accounts, presumably to incentivize them to pack up shop and move elsewhere. Various cheater discords were infiltrated, and in some cases even deleted if the rumors are to be believed, and the game's player numbers have been on a steady rise with the return of basic playability. It's a monumental action, it's exactly what the Fix TF2 movement was asking for, and it's a signal from Valve that they're willing to act. But I'm not gonna just leave it at that, because when I see this action, I genuinely don't think it's for TF2's good that they're doing this. Sure, that may have been on their minds, but here's the catch for all this. Valve has a new game in development, a 6v6 hero shooter called Deadlock. Insert obvious joke about being an Overwatch clone here, except add Dota 2 mechanics for the gameplay. Looks vaguely interesting, I guess? But here's the catch. For as long as Valve was exclusively doing their own thing as a tech company, running Steam and making VR headsets and other stuff that wasn't directly developing their own games, they could look past the rampant issues that exist in their games and people would just say, oh, they moved on, and leave it at that. But if they want to release a new game, specifically being an online shooter title, people look at the state of TF2 and they assume Deadlock won't be much better, because the conclusion they rightfully come to is that as a studio, Valve has chronic ADHD and can't do basic maintenance on previous titles. The state of TF2 hurts their brand, and I think that's the main reason they finally turned around to fix it. Maybe I'm wrong, and we're looking at the start of a second golden age for TF2, but I don't think I am. 7 years is a long, long time to wait for an increasingly unplayable game to get the most basic maintenance it was due the whole time. And even if people are happy that Valve finally did something, I don't think it's unfair for me to say that with the significant majority of TF2's player base, community trust is still out the window. And just because Dad came to visit and drop off groceries after a childhood of absence doesn't leave me with any delusions about him sticking around. The community's grievances with TF2 don't end with the bots and Valve's lack of response to it. Take a look at most other live service games operating these days. Helldivers is a good example of a game that's just done live service well. Regular updates, new content, and good security measures to ensure balanced, consistent, memorable gameplay are all good. What's the thing that tips that over into being great? The community itself. Take a broad view of what the community has accomplished over time with TF2. In the 16.5 years since its release, TF2's reach has spawned an entire genre with multiple generations of YouTubers promoting the game and its many forms of content. The TF2 Workshop carries the brunt of new content added to the game on its back, with seasonal speculation about content additions exclusively originating from community-created content speculated on by the community. Community servers like Uncletopia form the backbone of casual alternatives for consistently reliable gameplay. And goofier community servers running custom map rotations like my own give community map creators opportunities to have a public spotlight. It used to be that Valve would go out of their way to interact with the community to give them chances to grow, and it worked! Check the Meteor match update with the Heavy vs Pyro competition for who would get an update first. Let me compare that one to Helldivers again real quick. Basically the same thing there. Players got to choose a side, and from then until the end of the competition, any points they scored in casual or competitive servers would be counted towards their team's total vote. The community got fired up about it, heated debates occurred, and there was just across the board a lot of interest. Pyro won the competition, which obviously I was on Team Heavy myself, but I suppose in retrospect, I guess I can concede that Pyro needed a touch-up more than my boy did. Fair enough. But the point I'm trying to make here is that Valve used to do stuff with the community, and the community responded with engagement in turn. It's not like that was just treadmill work for Valve either. Events and updates like these were directly profitable for Valve, as it drove engagement with the game, promoted specific marketable products both in and out of the game itself, and further grew Valve's reputation. This is the community's second grievance with Valve, that despite the player count growing with time, despite the game being a live service masterpiece, and despite having all the resources and infrastructure already made available at their disposal, Valve just stopped interacting with the community. The community's done an admirable job giving themselves things to do over the years. For my part, I hosted a couple tournaments, ran a fashion show, and spent a fair bit of time showing off community maps. And a lot of TF2 YouTubers have found oddly specific niches to dominate. See Shonik talking about the technical inner workings of the game for such an example, and we've held on for over half a decade of Valve's stagnation. But things are finally slumping, and for at least some notable percentage of the community, the writing's on the wall that Valve's events and content drops just aren't coming back. And that sucks, because it feels like a collective's loyalty isn't being repaid on even the most basic level. Valve's stagnation in both basic game maintenance and basic community promotion are the two biggest issues by far that the community has been able to rally behind. So I'll leave behind the assumption of collective grievance with those two. But there's a lot of pent-up personal grudges I've got with TF2. So admittedly I wrote in the script 10-ish minutes here. I think this is going to go a little longer than 10 minutes, I'll be real. The next however long is just going to be me venting a small mountain of childish consumer complaints. Why am I doing this? Man, because this video is about burnout in the community, and the buildup of reasons for dissatisfaction is a prime cause of that. From the top. Number 1. A significant majority of the weapons in TF2 just aren't viable compared with their alternatives. Probably the only class slot I can think of where every possible weapon has a genuinely viable use are Medic's mediguns. Just about every other slot for every other class has a comparatively useless option. Any soldier secondary is an upgrade from the Righteous Bison. Any engineer primary is an upgrade from the Thompson. Stock Pyro's Fire Axe is literally a straight downgrade from the 3rd degree with no other stats. Across the board, TF2's weapon stats could use a reshuffling to make some weapons viable, and not just by nerfing the other ones. Number 2. One of the reasons I love TF2's universe so much is the story that underpins it, specifically as put forth in the TF2 comics. The official comics are a beautifully rendered set of unique and amusing tales that tell the story of Grey Man's takeover of Manco, and the subsequent robot war to try and seize it back. However, the comics were never finished, with the 7th of 8 total issues currently being the last one. And it's a darn shame, because it's a wonderful story, and I've sat here for the last 7 years wondering if we'll ever get to see the grand finale. Number 3. Cosmetics form the backbone of TF2's monetization strategy, with randomly dropping crates and purchasable keys, giving birth to a digital fashion scene that has made the game both famous and infamous for becoming one of the first games to successfully monetize cosmetic loot boxes. Promoting gambling to underage users is admittedly a little morally suspect, but I'm willing to give Valve the benefit of the doubt here because they were the first, and it's just a part of the game's culture. What I'm not willing to overlook is the fact that there's just so many unremarkably bad ones that it just makes the market feel bloated. It's not entirely Valve's fault for the quantity of cosmetics, it has been their business model after all, but the quality's just I mean, look, it got a bit better after the rock bottom of creative bankruptcy that was Smithsmith 21, but still, man. Number 4, the Heavy update! Need I say more? The entire phrasing around the Heavy versus Pyro competition I mentioned earlier during the 2016 Meet Your Match update was the fact that both were due for a content update. It was just a matter of deciding which one happened first. Sure, Pyro won fair and square, whatever. He got a jetpack, so I've made peace with that loss. But where's Heavy's update? It's been 7 years, and with more than half a decade behind us, I think it's fair for me to just outright say, Valve lied. But don't worry, they hear us and love this game like we do, right? Number 5. I know it's beating a dead horse to want more weapons, but specifically, it's just a sad missed opportunity of game design that there aren't weapons and tools that make use of specific slots. Take Spy's Sapper, for example. The only alternative is the red tape recorder, which is functionally useless in all but the most niche of competitive scenarios. Or Engineer's Construction PDA. It's a slot with a unique variant you can have in it, but not much else. Imagine if Engineer could have a different set of buildings, or a different way of going about things with the existing set. Just spitballing an idea, what if it took 4 times the time to build, but you could just outright build level 2 buildings with an alternate PDA? What I'm trying to say is with certain aspects of game design, I just look at it and go, man, this could have been so cool. Number 6. Alongside adding community content, the only thing Valve actually does for TF2 these days is occasional bug fixes. It's a small complaint here because most bugs do eventually get addressed, but there have been circumstances where bugs have just outright ruined the game and didn't get addressed for enough time that it had an impact on player perceptions. Remember how none of the versus Saxton Hale maps even worked at launch, and how even after they got fixed, all it took was 2 players to permanently softlock the game mode by not fighting? Remember that time bots gained the ability to just hard crash servers at will, and it went on for weeks? Remember how to this day bots are able to glitch clip hats into each other that shouldn't be able to be worn at the same time, and Valve just hasn't lifted a finger? Remember the crate depression? It's the little things, but they build up, and once people have experienced enough, they don't tend to forget. Number 7. Melee hit registration is just goofy. The fact that Demo Knight is an entire subclass with other classes having interesting melee options is a uniquely TF2 thing to have. There's so much to love about TF2's gameplay, and melee is consistently not one of them. I'm not going to be that guy and include random crits on this list. I personally happen to think random crits are goofy enough to justify, and even if I wouldn't mind if they were removed from primary weapons, I would actively campaign to keep them on most melee weapons. But hit registration is just profoundly rotten. I mean, how many times have you gone up to an enemy to give him a good smackdown, and your scout runs in front of you, eating your hit on an otherwise perfectly placed bad guy because his hitbox got in the way? Friendlies shouldn't prioritize getting punched. Number 8, let's talk about the economy. Keys have been going down in price for years. The value of refined metal is just barely above worthlessness. There's entire botnets designed to exploit inflation by farming weapon and crate drops constantly. How could this be fixed? How about making recipes better, like, actually useful and not the schizophrenic mess this is? Honestly, just give people a way to quickly get rid of mass amounts of metal. Having a refined metal sink that isn't the incredibly tedious process of crafting weapons into hats, that takes multiple minutes just to craft a single hat from weapons, by the way, so some streamlining of quality of life changes to crafting could also be useful, would just across the board make things better. Oh, and also, fighting the bots that are causing the inflation in the first place. That would help, but let's not be unrealistic. Number 9, here's another one of those this could have been great petty grievances. Remember Robot Destruction, Asteroid? And remember Territory Control, Hydro? Asteroid isn't a perfect map, and Hydro is infamous for being confusing to play on. But across the board, Robot Destruction and Territory Control are uniquely interesting game modes to me because they change the way you play and add notably creative replayability to the objectives of the map. I quite liked them, even if others didn't. The fact that the first item was scrapped and the other was abandoned saddens me, and it's one more addition on the long list of things about TF2 that just make me go, man. Number 10, check the TF2 tutorial. Where new players who know nothing about the game are likely to go. Don't get me wrong, TF2's skill floor is pretty low for some classes. You really don't need too long to figure out how to WM1 as Pyro, or how to sit in a spot and maintain buildings as an engineer. But still, there's so many needless obstacles for new players. There's only tutorials for half the classes, the tutorials themselves are needlessly long and dated. The default settings for TF2 itself are crap. Check the FOV and weapon switching settings if you need a better example of things that would just be better if the settings started off better. And you see what I mean. It's just not easy for new players to pick things up and get started like they could with other games. Number 11. Remember replays and demos? Not demos like the class, like the recording thing. A while back, Valve added the ability for you to save entire matches to put cameras in and analyze and record from any angle in real time. It sounded like a really cool feature, and it's not even available in casual and is an absolute abomination of a process to set up in custom servers. There's a few servers out there that have figured out how to set it up, but man, it's just a cool feature that's just so broken and unintuitive. It's sad, and it's just another one of those things that weighs down on me. And that's not even touching the impossibility of the YouTube video views achievements. Number 12. I was talking in my Discord a while back, and I saw a funny comment while chatting about bots. Quote, skill-based matchmaking would fix the bot crisis because the bot's skills would be so high they'd only ever face each other. It's a hilarious and kind of sad point because, frankly, it's true. Valve implemented a level system with the Meet Your Match update that added casual mode, and it's just not used, like, at all. I can't imagine it would be that hard to have some degree of skill-based matchmaking, but, well, casual system on the whole is just iffy with me. Like, I like being able to go wherever I want with a party, but the levels are meaningless, auto-balancing party members in matches despite queuing together, encountering bots and teams that could roll you like it's comp 6s. So much of it just makes me wonder, could this have been done better? Number 13. Yeah, can we talk about contracts? The contractor? That thing with the hilarious glitch that you can't easily do anymore. Yeah, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but as a replacement battle pass type thing, I genuinely enjoyed the Jungle Inferno Contractor. Pay $5 and get access to a customizable objectives experience, open-ended goals along a host of paths, open-ended rewards, a few really neat rewards that are actually worth something and can be sold on the community market, the potential to make your money back if you play your cards right. Man, I wish there were more contracts. And not just the crappy Halloween ones where all the items you get are untradeable. I loved the Jungle Inferno contracts, and as both a method of monetization and as a method of gameplay experience, it's a crying shame that wasn't made more use of. Number 14. Let's see. Yeah. Here's a couple points of just why levels of stagnation. The community server browser, that ugly thing, would it be that hard to modernize the look, maybe make it a bit more readable? Just have a UI that doesn't look like it's the Windows console? Or check crate drops. Maybe dropping me a winter crate in the middle of June isn't the best play for market stability. I mean, rarity of drop types is what spurs the market. Wouldn't it make the most sense to cut winter crates the moment winter ends? And the create server button. I don't suppose you could update that thing, make it possible for other players to actually join the server you create, even if only as a temporary thing. There's just a lot of miscellaneous things across the board that could use a quick checkup to see if they can be made viable. And it's this lack of basic attention to obvious update points that makes me wonder if a game is really worth my time, since I'm obviously not worth its time either. Number 15. There's some items on the market that really shouldn't be as limited, or whose limitedness should be made better use of. Take Eternaweens. You can't really get those anymore, so they're getting rarer and more expensive as time goes on. Why can't we get more of those? It's just a nice community tool to have for having a good time in casual, and it wouldn't hurt to bring those back as a rare crate drop. Or take Noisemakers. I know we haven't seen them in a week or so, but let's rewind before Valve woke up, or fast forward to when they inevitably fall asleep again. You know how you can tell when a wave of bots joins the game? Because you can hear the war horns from the noisemakers they have. Noisemakers that have infinite uses. Weren't those things supposed to have limited uses? Either make them infinite use for normal players so we can have a good time with them too, or fix what the bots are doing because they're bastardizing something that's supposed to be cool and making it look like it's the best option to cheat to maximize a feature. Number 16, competitive mode is a joke. There's no getting around it. Sit in queue for an hour only to get a match once you forgot you were queued. One bastard never joins and the match disbands immediately. Playing a full match of comp is more difficult than winning it, and even if you do, there's no incentive to doing so. Why bother? The TF2 comp scene is entirely community-based, and the specific mode is dead. I don't even know what the solution to this would be. Maybe add some tier of item drop that you can only get by playing a full game of comp with a better anti-cheat in place to make sure you actually played. But I'm not bringing this up because I have a solution. I'm bringing this up because it makes me sad. And it's just another item on the mountain of grievances half a decade of active community participation has gotten for me that have slowly left me feeling burnt. Number 17, the Mann store exists. Yeah, not much more to say there. The only reason anyone even uses it is to buy keys and new taunts. Everything else that's sold there is 50 miles of bloat. Here, want to buy an airstrike for $2? Or how about a crappy pyro armor cosmetic for $12? Or, ooh, here's a good one. How about this community bundle of old cosmetics from the Love and War update that you could get on community markets for $1? How about that for a whopping $250? And you want to know the best part of this? See that little sale icon right there, 24% off? Yeah, how long do you think that's been on sale? And notice how odd the original price is. $328.56. Chief, That's an artificial sale meant to engage consumers under the illusion of being a limited time offer, despite being the actual stale price. And according to the FTC, that's behavior so scummy we could bring you a class action lawsuit just for displaying it. My point here stands. Just clean up the Manco store, yeah? Number 18. I know I already mentioned weapon balance as my first point in this long list, but can I just head back to two specific weapons real quick? The Righteous Bison and the Pomson 6000 make me sad. This isn't even just a matter of they're not good, it's that they're not fun to use, and even seeing them being used makes me nostalgic for better times. The strategy of nerfing decent weapons into the ground instead of buffing the weak ones has contributed a lot to a general feeling of playstyle stagnancy when it comes to the history of this game, if that makes any sense. Number 19. Then there's the ways people cheat that aren't even cheating. I know this Grievance is going to be a bit controversial just because some people use it and find it fun, but the fact that people can mess with settings like CL interp and other connection speed things really pisses me off. I mean, come on, I'm a heavy main, and spies are the ones who most frequently use this setting. How fair is it that I'm playing with a good connection like everyone else is supposed to be, and this one shutterbug, jitter-sliding, douchebag slimeball, scumbucket, lard packet, squid-nosed snotling of a human being gets to clip through walls lagging so hard I get one frame of seeing his actual hitbox before he's behind me, then watch as he face stabs another 3 of my teammates. This used to be a bigger issue, and I'm obviously dramatizing this a bit more than is realistic, but still, it's the little things, and nobody likes feeling like they're playing a game rigged to lose. That was such a fun line to write. Finally, number 20. I know there's been a lot of ups and downs with my list of fighting points here, but I think I've saved the most undeniably egregious for last. Let's talk about the supporting tools that make the TF2 community's greatest mountaintops possible: Hammer and Source Filmmaker. The Hammer editor is the program that allows you to assemble maps, run game logic, set spawns, and do literally everything else needed to make a custom map for Team Fortress 2. Source Filmmaker is the program that lets you put characters and items into a custom setting, pose them, light them up, take images, and even make animations. Some of the most brilliantly unique and beautiful triumphs of the TF2 community have been made possible because of one or both of these tools, and they're essential for anybody who wants to get into the nitty-gritty of community creation, which is why it's a bloody shame they're both horrifically outdated, badly put together, not intuitive in the slightest, outclassed in nearly every way by Blender and other programs, and just altogether in need of a significant touch-up. I mean, just look at what people have done. Folks made the Hammer++ program specifically to be a better version of Hammer because Valve didn't want to fix the most glaringly obvious issues with the design of the program. At SFM, you have to manually update the TF2 assets in that game twice a year to stay updated with the latest seasonal drops because SFM's asset libraries don't update along TF2 and haven't done so for nearly the last decade. And man, whatever happened to the Saxy Awards? Where did those go? Showcases like that used to be so much fun. It's downright dereliction of duty on Valve's part that some of these most basic building blocks of TF2 creativity aren't being attended to like they should be, and it's one of the most pressing grievances in my mind to date. Right. I think I've yapped on long enough about the game's issues. I've made my point. Allow me to go back a bit and talk about some channel history here. Coming up on 3 years ago, July 31st, 2021, I published a video titled Drip or Drown Fashion Show. I'd been in a season of relatively regular activity. I was all in on the YouTube grind and things were going great. A few times I even managed to have daily uploads during the summer of 21. COVID was still around and in everyone's mind. School was out, the numbers were up, it was great. I was at the peak of my activity with TF2 and with its community. And that one video, Drip or Drown, proved to be an unexpected smash hit, so I made another one, and another. And by the time the third one went up, I realized it was a series I could milk for a while, so that's what I did. College resumed in the fall and my activity fell off again, but I kept making a Drip or Drown every month for a solid year, ending it the next summer with the 12th and final one. After that last video, I hosted a full-on fashion tournament with 500 players involved. Fashion Fortress. Speaking of, I'm gonna finally sit down and make the video on that once I'm done with this one. Sorry it took... oh geez, 2 years. Huh. Anywho, from the moment that series ended, I started to feel my interest in the game's mainstay elements declining a bit. Don't get me wrong, I still loved the game just the same as I did during the main active season, but I could feel my interest in the day-to-day of it fading, so I looked around for other ways to pass the time. From fall of 22 through summer of 23, I engaged in a handful of Hearts of Iron 4 submodding projects for the Fallout Overhaul mod, Old World Blues. It was fun, I wrote a literal book's worth of content for the nations me and my friends modded for, and the works were well received. All during that time, meantime, I also tried to stay on top of keeping YouTube uploads regular enough, and here or there I found some fun things to do and try and make videos on, but I could tell things weren't doing the best for my overall engagement with TF2. My style moved further away from playing the game and further into reviewing community content and basically running a podcast while I did so. Not that I didn't have fun with that, but eventually it did start to take its toll. How so, if I was still getting views and having fun? Well, firstly, I could tell that channel growth had stopped, and the fact that steady but stagnating viewership attended most of my videos didn't do me any favors. And secondly, I could tell I was getting lazier with my content, cutting corners, simplifying. The videos were still fun, but they weren't special. And especially over the last year, I came to the evaluation that most of my videos, fun as they sometimes were slop. And that the stagnation of TF2 as a game was having some impact on that reality. If nothing ever changes in the game, why should my style ever change either? Fast forward to December of 2023, just 6 months ago. Lethal Company had just come out and rose to stardom overnight, and my friends convinced me to play it. And it was beautiful. Over the course of the month of December, I took clip after clip after clip of Shadowplayed Lethal Company footage, and by the end of the month, I had a mountain of footage to work with. Over the course of early January, I put those clips together, and I made the first non-TF2 video I'd made in years. Lethal Company Occupational Hubris. I'll be frank, I think I outdid myself with that one, and if you like Lethal Company even a bit, I'd recommend checking that video out. Why? Because it wasn't slop. I know that's a really vague way of putting it, but across the board, I felt that video meant something to me. It wasn't just a stream I was cutting down of a game I'd done to death. It was a month's worth of the best moments of me having a great time with my friends. And I gave its editing notably more attention than I'd given most videos in my recent history. And the intro, man, it was satisfying to actually make a good intro. Special thanks to Cassie Draws for the thumbnail in that video, by the way. She also did the thumbnail for this video, and we'll probably be doing more in the foreseeable future. Put all those factors together, a longer time to cook, more high-quality footage to work with, professional thumbnail work, a proper title, shifting themes, and an S-tier intro, and I had something to be proud of. Why I'm mentioning all of this in a video about TF2 burnout is because it stands in sharp contrast to the culture I felt squashed under with TF2. The only new things are created by the community. The only change is that which the vague outline of a mystical janitor or potted plant approves over at Valve HQ in Bellevue, and experimentation is generally frowned upon by the algorithm mostly recommending proven successes. I have a feeling I'm not alone in the dissatisfaction among YouTubers in the scene, and even if my case of mental stagnation is on the extreme end, I'm tired of being creatively bankrupt because the community's been doing the heavy lifting for this game's longevity for the last 5 years. Here's a bit of a life update on what I've been doing over the last few months, if anyone's curious. I've been trying new stuff. A friend recommended I play Hades, a fast-paced action roguelite in the setting of dramatized Greek myth, and I freaking loved it! Masterpiece of a game that I 100%ed in just under 100 hours. Then the Hades 2 early access came out, and I've since done everything there is to do in that game for now. I gave Destiny a fair shot. Not my cup of tea, but it was an interesting experience glitching out of the map with friends. Got a little bit back into Sea of Thieves, and finally got to Pirate Legend. I uninstalled Hearts of Iron 4 and my other favorite strategy games, and I'll be trying to swap them out for new ones. I've been thinking about giving Helldivers a try for obvious reasons. We'll see what else pops up. Oh, and another thing. I graduated college. Took 5 years in a major shift, but I got a bachelor's degree, majoring in political science and minoring in creative writing. Yeah, that's basically the Hoi 4 degree combo. I know, get your jokes out. Still, I'm done with college and looking to spend the next few months seeing if I can make YouTube work out full-time. Now, the trick with that is if I'm going to be doing it full-time, I need it to be enjoyable. Is making TF2 content enjoyable? Admittedly, not really. And that's the crux of why I wanted to make this video. I've spent the last 5 years doing my part for a fairly alright community, trying to keep a great game alive. I'm not alone in that either. A bunch of people can probably relate with the feeling of the ethos argument of knowing the legacy of this game relies on its community. And as a member of the community, it's specifically my duty to keep the game going. Collective responsibility falls on individual shoulders, and that keeps us involved, because the legacy of the game is stronger than any individual one of its players. It's a powerful thing feeling like you're carrying the world on your shoulders, and should you falter, one of the many pillars holding up the game might go with it. It's great for community longevity because it keeps people around and it keeps people feeling like they matter, but when I've been playing off and on for nearly a decade, making content and managing a community for half that, and doing everything in my power to balance walking 500,000 tightropes with that whole YouTuber gig, while also balancing the other 500,000 tightropes in my accompanying life, it's time to move on. I'm not going to do so right away. I've still got just a few more TF2 video ideas up my sleeve, and I want to ramp up into better quality content for just those few more videos before I clock out for the last time. But I think I've made a fair enough case for moving on. If even my buddy Mac uninstalled TF2 because the game's too stagnant for even his drunk rear end to want to keep playing, that's just one less reason for me to stick around myself. I'm only human, and at the end of the day, if the Lethal video taught me anything, I just want to play games with my friends. So that's pretty much all I've got to say. Team Fortress 2 is not a dead game, and despite the utter disregard for the community Valve's shown, and despite the community's undeniable decline over the last year or two, the game will live on for as long as it's free on Steam. There will always be community servers, even if Valve shuts down the main servers, and I don't see any circumstance where they cut item server support. As a cult classic and a foundational piece of PC gaming culture, Team Fortress isn't going anywhere. And there is cause for hope as well, even if it's a small hope. The bots finally being pushed back against means Valve will have a breather period where they could add content without receiving the obvious criticism of not doing the basic maintenance they can now say they did. VScript being added to the game means potentially community customization is far greater than it used to be. Valve adding community game modes to the game speaks well of a potential comeback in the vague future. And the sheer stubbornness of the game's market and competitive scenes will always have a place. It's not a dead game, and I'm not going to pretend it is, but I hope I've made a fair enough case here why I think it's fair that longtime community veterans, and the more medium-term folks like myself, aren't in the wrong to feel just a little burnt out. If TF2 ever truly dies, it'll only be because the community finally and truly gives up. And despite Valve's recent action, I'm heartbroken over the state of TF2, both because of what it's done for me and because of what it represents on its own. But I'm not everyone, and irrational as it may seem to me, there will always be another generation to hop into CTF2 for another game of Capture the Flag. At least now they can do so without worrying about getting headshot by a robot the second they walk out of spawn. If anyone at Valve sees this video, I'm not going to ask anything of you, because that's not my place. I've been a long-time customer of your products, and I'm voting with my wallet that it's time to seek greener pastures. Now granted, even that game's rigged, because if I buy new games, it'll be through Steam, so I guess you win either way. But that irony aside, you get my point. To everyone else watching this video, thanks for sticking around with this game for the long haul. I really do hope you're willing to stick around here to see if I don't entirely flop on the whole not just TF2 thing I'm going to be trying in a few months. And thanks for your time. Have a good one, and in the name of selling products and getting in fights, have a downright violent rest of your day. Cheers.